You're listening to the Business Club for Grown-Ups podcast with Jessica Fearnley. So hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Business Club for Grown-Ups podcast with me, Jessica Fearnley. Today I'm joined by Louise Brogan, who is also my guest in the Business Club for Grown-Ups membership group this January. So welcome, Louise.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm really excited to have a chat with you today on your podcast.
So Louise helps women entrepreneurs raise their visibility through online marketing. And today she's going to be sharing with us the story of how she built her own business, because it doesn't just happen overnight, does it, Louise, when you start a business like yours and like mine?
Oh my goodness, definitely not. It has changed and reiterated so many times, definitely over the 6 years that I've been in business, that's for sure.
And do you have anything that you'd like to add for everyone who's listening by way of introduction? I've kind of given your little tag that you have, but yes. Who are you as a person? Where are you based in the world? I think we probably have a clue from your accent.
Yeah, so my name is Louise Brogan. I'm a mum of three. I live just outside Belfast in Northern Ireland, and I help people to raise their visibility through really building a business online. So I do various things. I run local workshops. I train in person locally, and online I have a membership site called the Social Bee Academy, and I work with people one-to-one as well. And it's all about really a whole system of growing a business online. So from websites to social media to growing an email list as well. That's the different ways that I help people.
Fantastic. And what was it that made you want to start the business that you have now? Was this your first business that you ever set up?
Well, no, it wasn't actually. It's a funny story. It's quite, actually, I think when I was a teenager, I was an Avon lady, which I don't think I've ever mentioned that on my podcast myself. I have a podcast as well, the Social Bee podcast. Yeah, so as a teenager, I used to sell stuff from Avon catalogues to my mum's friends. My dad had his own business, so I grew up in a household where my dad ran Mackay Cars. It was a car and van hire company in Belfast in the 70s and 80s. And he always said, never ever work for yourself, go and get a job. So I did. I got a job. I was a software engineer for BT. Then I was a project manager in the health service for 11 years. But when I had my first child, on maternity leave, I'm just not the kind of person who sits. I mean, not that you're on maternity leave that you sit around, but you know, when the baby's sleeping, I didn't want to be cleaning the house. I started a business selling craft supplies on eBay.
Ooh.
So my first business was called Cleo Crafts. And Cleo was named after my daddy. So my daddy's nickname as a teenager was Cleo for various reasons. And he passed away when my first baby was 4.5 weeks old. So I started a business that I called after him, selling craft supplies. And eventually, after a couple of years, I opened a craft shop locally here in Northern Ireland.
Oh, wow. So like a real brick and mortar shop.
Yes. While still working part-time as a project manager in the health service. The time I opened the craft shop, it was on maternity leave with my third child. So my wee boy was 3 months old when I opened this shop. Oh my goodness. When I think back on it now. So I had a part-time job, quite a big job, I was responsible for a team of people. I had a craft shop and I had 3 small children. And when I look back now, I think, it was a little bit crazy. But the craft shop didn't work, Jessica. I didn't make any money at it. I made enough money to pay my staff and my overheads and to get stock in, but I didn't really pay myself very much money. And a mentor came to work with me through my local council. And she said to me, she just sat me down with a cup of tea and said, this business is just running you into the ground. You're not making any money at it. But you're really good at social media. So you really seem to understand how social media works. Now, this was about 7 years ago. So back when people didn't really understand how to use Facebook, Instagram didn't even exist. And she says, would you not look at helping other business owners figure out how to use Facebook. So that is where my business came from. That's where Social Bee started.
Wow. That's amazing. Because I was going to ask you, like, so when was this? Was this like 10 years ago? But that's really helpful for sort of understanding the route that you've taken to the business that you now have. Because I think that's the case for a lot of us who have online businesses. Sometimes you've started off doing something completely different. I actually used to have a multi-level marketing business back in, when would that have been? Probably around 2010. So I don't know, I was going to say not that long ago, but that is actually quite long ago.
That's why that's why I opened my shop.
So I used to sell Phoenix cards. And
so did I.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because it was doing that made me think, I love having a business. I just don't really love this business. I want to be in control. I want more decision-making power. I want to be able to say, actually, I'm not going to charge that. I'm going to charge something else. But I think it's really helpful if you are listening to this and you currently have a multi-level marketing business, or you have at any one time. It's amazing the number of people I speak to who actually that was one of the things they did first. And it really opened their eyes to the opportunity and their ability to run a business.
Yes, that's so fascinating, because I did Phoenix cards as well. On the side of my craft shop, because I love stationery. Like, I really love stationery, and my friend Pippa was selling it, and I thought, I could do that on the side as well. That's, the product's gorgeous, why not? But you see so many women who are in multi-level marketing or network marketing, and I think, but you know how to do a business, you know how to promote yourself on social media, you know how to take orders, deliver products. Actually, imagine if you took those skills and create, as you say, create your own business out of it, what potential you would have. So that's really interesting, that probably quite a lot of women like you and I, that it's your first toe in the water of entrepreneurship, isn't it?
Yeah. And I don't know about you, I totally didn't think of it like that at the time. But then when I came to sort of the point in my first maternity leave where I was thinking, I think that I don't want to go back to a 9-to-5. I think that I want to set up my own business. And that thought was completely terrifying, because I was like, I can't do that. I'm just me. But actually, it's when you get that little spark and you're like, well, I have been doing this and I've really enjoyed it. So what was that process like for you, of going from having tea with this business mentor who said, look, this business is not really ever going to do anything for you with your shop?
Yeah.
What was the next step for you? Because I'm sure there are lots of people listening who are at that stage where they love their business, but at the same time, they're not making money from their business. And that is making them feel really rubbish about just everything. Because it's exhausting, isn't it? When you're in that state of like, any day now, the profit will come through, and it just isn't.
Yes. No, yeah. So I can see myself so clearly standing behind the counter of that shop. And I loved my shop. It was so pretty and all the stuff was gorgeous. And I kept thinking, it's going to turn a corner. It's going to turn a corner. And whenever Nuala, the mentor, spoke to me about it, it was a huge sigh of relief, because I was putting, I was trying to figure out how to make it work, and I really wanted it to work, and I wanted to leave my job and focus on the business. But there was no way I was going to do that, because it could never have replaced my salary that I had. And I thought, if I left my job, maybe I could focus more on the business. But anyway, she just talked so much sense to me, and I was really lucky. And not everyone who has a bricks and mortar business would be like this. I was so lucky, because my landlord was a charity. It was like a third sector charity. And when I contacted them and said, look, I'm not paying myself, I was brutally honest with them. I said, I'm not really paying myself a salary here. And I've got a lease that runs for another year. And they said, they spoke to their trustees, and they said, we, as a charity, we don't feel right about taking money from you when you're not actually even paying yourself. So I was able to get out of my lease, which was so amazing.
That is amazing.
And I know that that's not the case for everybody. And I don't know what I would have done if it hadn't been the case. And one of my customers approached me and asked, could they come in as a partner? And I was so tempted to do that as well. And I'm so glad that I didn't. And interestingly, or sadly, I suppose, that person, when I said that I was closing and selling off all the stock, she never spoke to me again, which wow. I thought was really sad, because we had been, she had been in she had run classes for me and been in regularly. I thought we were friends, and that was quite upsetting. But I was so glad when I finally closed it, and then I had to start really building up Social Bee into a business. And how I did that, and again, I didn't leave my job for another 2 years after that. So I had the safety net of my salary coming in. But starting Social Bee, I had a few friends who had their own businesses, and I worked for them for free, just for a couple of months, until I got the confidence to know that I could do this as a paid job. But it started out completely differently. I started out as a social media manager, and I don't do that at all anymore.
I think that's really common, actually, to almost start out with something. And if you're listening to this and you have an idea for a business that you just haven't really put into practice yet, or you're just waiting for the right moment, I think I would always say, just don't give it too much thought, because your business will evolve naturally. And sometimes you might find that you try something and you actually come full circle and end up sort of back at your core offer that you thought you were going to have at the beginning. But I do think that it's very important not to want everything to be developed and perfect. Like, start out with one thing. And what you're saying, Louise, about kind of staying in your job for 2 years, that's really sensible. It didn't even occur to me that I could have done that. So I literally started my business with £200 and was like, right then, what are we going to do? No safety net, no nothing. And I think, I made it work, and my husband has been incredibly supportive. And we managed to, we set up our finances so that we could just live off his salary, which is not huge. He's a vicar in the Church of England, and
I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. They're not paid all that much, but we've managed to kind of get through that early stage of my business where there isn't really reliable money coming in, and there's a lot of outlays and that kind of thing. So how did you know when you were ready, Louise, to actually take that step and say goodbye to your regular salary and your day job? Did you know from the beginning, like, were you kind of thinking, if I can get to this amount of income, or I'll just know when the right moment is? What was the criteria in your mind for that?
I didn't spend any of the money that I earned in the business until I had enough to replace my salary.
That's really, really sensible.
So we are, I live with my husband. We have 3 kids, and he has a good salary, but we don't want to, not to do without, but I want to be able to pay for my kids to go to their extra clubs, and we go on Spain on holiday every year. And I didn't want me starting a business to affect our lives financially. And I am very risk averse anyway. So I saved everything that I earned. I invested as well. I invested in software and in building a website, and I pay for my email marketing, and and I pay a lot more now that I'm further down the road. And I paid for training courses and stuff, and I strongly believe in investing, but I didn't take money out of the business for myself. I kept it all in my business bank account. And then the tipping point was the pure frustration in my day job, because if anyone listening works in the health service, in the management side, it's quite tough. It's quite tough. There's cuts all the time. It came out, my job was connected to my software engineering role. So I was implementing software projects in the health service. So there's a lot of resistance from the people that I was trying to help, because I used to hear all the time, I just want to go and do my day job. My day job is helping my patients, and I understood that. But sometimes it was just really frustrating. You're trying to implement a project that I knew could really benefit a team that I was working with, and they just didn't want to know about it. So it came to a head one day when I had a really, really difficult project meeting with my project team, and I came out of the room and I rang my husband at lunchtime, and I just said, this is just brutal. I'm just like banging my head off the wall. And he said to me, well, just leave. You've shown you can do it. You've shown your business can make money. You've got all that money stashed away. What are you waiting for? And I thought, I think I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for you to shove me off the cliff. And I handed my notice in literally that week. And
that's amazing.
It was amazing and terrifying. And once I left, I literally have never looked back. So, but it did take my husband. He said to me, "Get your coat and get the rock out of there." And that was the big push that I needed. Somebody else to say, "Right, do it."
Yeah, I think that's really important actually, isn't it? And I started my career in the NHS, also in the sort of management side. So really understand. I used to work in not customer, but patient complaints.
Oh, Lord.
You can do customer service in the NHS. You can do pretty much anything. That was very much baptism of fire for me as a young person. But yeah, I think that's really helpful, isn't it? That sometimes we are ready, but we don't actually realize that we are, and we need someone else to just show it to us really clearly. And when I decided to start my business, it came through a conversation with a friend, because I'd been saying, oh, I love what I've been doing in my job. I think I just feel like I've been in this startup for 4 years and we've grown it to 7 figures, which is what we said we always wanted to do. And now the goal is going to be building it up more and looking at business sales. And I just don't really feel like I want to go through that whole process again. I want to sort of go back somewhere really small and make it big.
Yes.
And it was sort of having that conversation with a friend, and she was like, well, do that then. And I was like, how? Like, should I just go and work for another company that's kind of small and, almost? And she was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, no, it doesn't, does it? And so it was almost, she said, just why don't you become a business coach? Why don't you just do consulting? Why don't you help people with the skill set that you have? And I think sometimes there's something really powerful about someone else just almost holding up a sign being like, it's so obvious.
It's so obvious.
But it never feels quite the same. But I think it's part of becoming an entrepreneur, isn't it? It's learning to see the opportunity. And so often when we're in a 9-to-5 job, especially if it's something that we don't really love, then we just feel like, well, I have to do this because it's part of like the rules of life, isn't it? You go to school, you go to uni, you get a degree, then you go and do a job and you stay in that job or some kind of 9-to-5 employment for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Whereas, for me, sort of deciding not to do 9-to-5 anymore and not to do corporate and just to like do this job that I do now, where I wear pajama bottoms if I want to, and it's all online, and people say, what do you do? And you say, I'm a business coach, and they're like, what on earth is that?
What does that even mean?
Exactly, it's a completely different category, isn't it? But I think the more you get used to making those kinds of decisions, I love that you said kind of jumping off the cliff, because that's what it feels like at every stage of a business like ours, isn't it? There's no assurance because you're on this weird path that you've sort of invented yourself.
Yes.
And so you're like, well, let's just take the next step and see what happens. And you do learn to kind of roll with the punches with that kind of thing, don't you, after a while?
Oh, definitely. And I think even when I look at my business in the last year, it's changed so much, even in 1 year, where I'm doing a lot more. Like maybe a year and a half ago, I wasn't really doing one-to-ones. And now I do one-to-ones with people. And this year I launched my first Mastermind. So in January 2018, I launched my membership site, which is something I'd been thinking about for a while. About 2 years previous to that, I had created online courses and thought, this is the way forward. I'm going to do online courses. And then I realized, actually, I like working with people in the community aspect of the online courses. So I launched a membership in January 2018. And then the next step up for me was to do a mastermind. So I launched my first mastermind in September. And I have loved it, Jessica. So it's when you kind of, as you say, you take a chance on things and you see if they're going to work. So now I have a membership and a mastermind. And the other thing I did this year was an online summit as well. So, and that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur, is because you make the rules and you decide what you're going to do next. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. I tried to do a mastermind in-person day in Belfast, and I launched it to my list. And literally nobody was interested. And I thought,
we've all had launches like that. And I think if you're listening and you're like, oh, I'm scared to launch because it might happen. It might happen, but actually it's what
probably will happen.
It's the way that you actually develop these ideas, because you kind of say, is this ready to go out there? And if you get crickets in response to what you do, then it's like, okay, more work is needed, but it's never the end of the story, is it?
No. So that mastermind day, so I had booked a place, a full day in the working space for our local hospice. They have these really fabulous conference rooms, and nobody bought it. And I thought, right, after a week, I thought, nobody's going to come to this, and I've booked this room and I want to use it. So I changed it. I changed it into a full day workshop on how to use Facebook and Instagram, and I sold 10 places.
Amazing.
So I just changed it around. And the feedback from that day was so good that I'm doing it again in January.
And that's the thing, we can have this feeling, can't we, that everyone is watching, everyone's taking notes on every email that we send, and they'll be like, oh, you said you were going to do this and now you're doing something else. And like, people just aren't watching that closely, are they? It's a very forgiving space, even though visibility can be really scary. People are usually watching with so much more sympathy and support for you than you would usually imagine. Have you found that?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because you do think, oh, people are going to think that she can't run a mastermind day. But actually, if I quizzed my audience now, do you remember when I was going to do that mastermind day? They'd be like, what are you talking about? We don't remember that.
Yeah, and it's, you know, when you're doing a launch, you feel like it's practically written in the sky that you're launching, but the number of people are like, oh, do you have a program? Yes, I have a program. I've been telling him, but you haven't. And actually, people need to be told like 100 times before they actually realize that you're doing anything. So it gives you a lot of safety and security. If you're wanting to just try something for the first time, actually, people will not remember. They won't be like, you said you were going to do this on January the 17th and I didn't notice that you did anything. They, you know, it just won't even come into their head at all, will it? So it's a lot safer to sort of try out these ideas and just see what happens. Oh
no, definitely. And I think you have to be brave. Try things, and if they're not going to work, then change them. And even if somebody does email you and say, well, what happened to that thing you were going to do? That's okay. It's your business, you know?
Yeah. You just say, actually, we decided to go in a different direction. And the people who were booked onto the new thing are totally happy with what we've decided. So it's and I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's seeing that as a positive situation overall and not being like, oh gosh, I tried something and it failed. It's like, well, welcome to being an online business owner, because you can try loads of stuff. And a lot of it does fail in the early days, doesn't it? But I think that's actually really good for us because it builds our resilience to that kind of, oh no one's bought. You can actually go, okay, so what do I need to do about this? And I think for me, certainly a big part of my learning was when something went wrong, just being like, right, let's regroup. Let's go back a stage and think, you know, there's an audience for this. You know that they have this need. So why isn't your offer meeting that need? I think it can become like actually something that you quite enjoy because you're like, right, post-mortem, this dead offer, what went wrong?
I think, Jessica, sometimes I think when that kind of thing happens, that's when I will then go off and find some kind of teaching or program to help me figure out how to do that better as well. And I think that's where maybe you and I are very similar in that we're prepared to invest in ourselves and go and find out how to improve and move forward as well. Like I know you and I are both in some other membership sites as well. And I think having, you know, the kind of get up and go and find out how to do stuff rather than kind of crawling into a hole and saying, well, that didn't work. I have to go and work in the shop now.
Do you know what? I always joke with my husband, you know, I will say, you know, if it goes really badly with this launch, I'll just have to go to Tesco and stack shelves.
Well, I was going to say Tesco.
But it's true, isn't it? And I know that over the years that you run a business like ours, you do pick up a lot of lessons learned and mistakes that you've made. What would be your kind of biggest lessons that you've learned through doing your business?
I've learned that when I'm consistent, it pays off. Definitely. And it's not that I struggle with consistency, but I have to pull myself back in line.
Yeah.
So I know if I write a blog post once a week, and I know that I email my list out with advice and stuff once a week, then my business grows. And I have to be strict with myself to remember to fit time in for that stuff. A different mentor had said to me about the two pipelines. So there's the pipeline of work that you're working on, but you can't forget about the pipeline of future work.
Yeah.
And if you focus so much on working with the clients that you have right now and forget to, you know, create content that's going to attract future clients, then when the work you're working on now finishes, where's your next set of clients coming from?
Yeah. So and you never want to get to the end of that work and be like, right, now what are we going to do to promote? That it's too late by that point, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't got a month in between to sit and earn nothing to build up the next set of clients. We need to kind of be working on both pipelines at the same time. So I've definitely learned about being more consistent in my creation of content, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that is just really important at all stages of a business, isn't it? Because we seem to have this inbuilt thing where if something's working, we'll go, oh yeah, that's going really well, that's bringing in loads of stuff. Next day we just stop doing it, and we can't even articulate why we made that decision. But I think we have to be really aware of what we're aiming for. We have to set goals in our business and actually know what our strategy is. And I don't know, I guess when you're in the early stages, a lot of that can feel very technical, and you're like, do I really need a strategy if it's just me? And it's like, put your pajamas on, open up your computer, write a blog post, that's my strategy. But at the same time, it's getting used to thinking, but what's the blog post going to do for you? Why are you doing it? Who is it for? What do they need? What do you want to be able to offer them through that? You know, it's just getting more nuance to all of these ideas as you go through your business, isn't it? Because that's a really good skill, because then as your business grows, then your system for managing it all and thinking about setting your strategy, that has to grow as well.
It's interesting because one of the mistakes that I made this year was I have been using Pinterest for really getting traffic to my website, and I had been using Tailwind and paying for it, and I made the decision about maybe 3-4 months ago to stop using Tailwind. And it's the way Pinterest works is really fascinating, because I can now see my visitors to my website are dropping. And it's because I'm not using the system that I had set up, and it was working really well. And I have to think, why did I know that I was trying to cut costs in various places because I wanted to invest in other things. But why I cut that one is beyond me now, because I can see the effect it's having. So I set that back up again this week, actually.
Well, Pinterest is very much like, once you're doing it, it's like you can't jump off, because anything that you do, I have to be quite careful on my Pinterest, because I have a business account, but I also had a personal account, and I thought I was on my personal account, but I was on my business account, and I pinned a picture of a dinosaur birthday cake for my son. It's like completely, it took me several months to fix the damage that one like stray pin had caused, because then suddenly Pinterest likes to put you in boxes, doesn't it, and be like, you are this kind of business and this is the kind of service that you had. It's now convinced that I do something to do with dinosaurs, and I cannot tell it otherwise. But you do have to be extremely consistent with a platform like Pinterest.
Yes. So that was a mistake a recent mistake that I have now rectified, hopefully, while I'm in process of doing. So yeah, I think it's good to admit to your mistakes too.
Absolutely. I have a podcast episode coming up called The 3 Biggest Mistakes I've Made in My Business.
I
feel slightly vulnerable about the fact that I've decided to do it, but I feel really strongly about it. And maybe it's, project management background, but I believe really strongly in lessons learned. And I always do like a lessons learned document for anything that I'm doing, whether it's a launch or a product or, building anything in my business. And just as you go through, every time you're like, oh yeah, mess that up, put it on the list, because it's not about blame, and it's not about kind of going, oh gosh, I'm so rubbish. It's more just being like, do you know what, next time I do this, I would really benefit from that piece of information, or just doing that the other way around, or doing this first, or something like that. But it just means that nothing is wasted, and you learn from everything that goes wrong. So I'm really passionate about embracing those mistakes and being like, do you know what, in order to make mistakes, you've got to do stuff. And if you're doing stuff, then you're being brave, because you can just sit on the sidelines, can't you? And have all these ideas and never do anything. It took me 2.5 years to get from having the idea for my membership group to actually launch it, which I did this summer. And during that time, a lot of stuff happened. Had another baby, moved house 200 miles away, had a house renovation, all this kind of stuff. So it wasn't like I was just sitting there the whole time going, oh gosh. But I think part of it was that I was sitting on the sidelines thinking, I can't do that, can I? And I think if you're just willing to do stuff, even if it goes completely wrong, you end up further forward, because while it's just an idea, it's very safe, isn't it? And you never have to really do it. You're just like, well, next I will do this big thing. And it will go really well. But actually, if you do the big thing and it doesn't go well, it really, really flops. That can feel worse, but actually you're being brave. You're taking that next step, and you're putting yourself on that process of like, what do I need to do to actually make this work? And what do I need to add to it? What do I need to change? So I think that it's a really strong position to be in. And, we should never apologize for the mistakes that we make. So many of them, they feel terrible to us at the time, but we can't even remember them after they've happened. And they don't usually have long lasting effects at all, do they? So yeah, I think it's brilliant to be able to look back and pinpoint those things and say, yeah, that did go completely wrong, and be able to laugh about it and know what you're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the online summit that I did this year, I'm thinking I should have had a lessons learned log. But that's an example of something where I really pushed myself out of my comfort zone to do that. So for anyone who's listening, just know an online summit it's like having a conference, but online rather than in person. And the last one I did, I think I had 11 or 12 speakers, and they all delivered like an online class for maybe 45 minutes, and I dripped it out over 3 days. So when you signed up in advance, and on day one you got access to the first, maybe it's more, maybe like 4 speakers a day, 4 or 5 speakers a day, and each day you got access to the next set of speakers. And I do remember a lesson I learned, actually, because I gave people 48 hours access to each day, and I know now to cut that to 24 for various reasons. But asking other people to come in to deliver content to my audience for free is a big step. And I think everybody said yes that I asked. And then those people then had to promote it. They didn't have to, but I asked them would they promote it to their lists, and they did. And I think then I sold a pass to it at the end, so anybody who wanted access to the content at the end. It was like £97, and I think I only got 10 or 15 sales. But it wasn't really about that. It was about I had seen other people do online summits, and I really wanted to try it out.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of other things. I didn't see anybody else doing one that I could apply to be on, so I thought I'd create my own.
Yeah, I have to say, I think that's the biggest thing that makes you actually take that action, isn't it? You think, I'd really like there to be something like this. Yes. No one else has done it, so I guess I have to.
Yeah.
But there's something very powerful about doing things under your brand as well, isn't it? Because it builds your authority, but also proves to you that actually you can do these big things.
Yes.
And that's a brilliant segue, because you happen to have another online summit coming up, don't you, Louise?
Yes. So it's launching on the 28th of January, and it's called Raising Your Visibility. So it's for women entrepreneurs who want to raise their visibility online. So I have some amazing speakers, including the lovely Jessica. So we have experts talking about speaking, creating your own events. I have Kate Erickson's coming on to do a class on podcasting. Jessica Lorimer's coming on to do a class on sales. Who else is coming? Hannah from Talented Ladies Club is coming on to do a course on pricing. Carol Cox of Speaking Your Brand is coming on to do a class on speaking. And yeah, loads of really fabulous speakers. And this time I reached out to people who probably are way more than one step ahead of me in my business. Whereas the last time, I think most of my speakers were 1 or 2 steps ahead of me. This time I have got some people who I really see as role models for me, who are coming in to do classes. Oh, and Martin of Jammy Digital.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah,
he is wonderful. He's doing a class on websites or SEO. It's not, as you and I are recording this, it's not entirely firmed up what everyone is talking about. But it's going to be a 3-day online summit, and it starts on Monday, the 28th of January. It's going to be brilliant. So it's free access to join. You sign up and you get access to all of the speakers and their classes for 3 days. And there'll be like a Facebook group to go with it as well, which is actually really good fun. Jessica, as a speaker, you should get in that group, because I know from last year that quite a lot of my speakers got clients from being in the group and helping.
Oh, fantastic.
And talking about their talk.
I always love to go in groups for stuff like that and just talk to people and get to know them, because I just think building relationships is such a great way. It is, to grow your business, but also just to understand what people are struggling with, what they need your help with, and being able to just help someone in a Facebook group like that. That's one of my favorite things about having an online business.
Yeah, so whatever your talk is on, people will have questions about it afterwards, and if you're in that group, you can see the questions that they're asking. That's your blog. That's your blog posts for the next 3 months.
Exactly. It's really helpful feedback for stuff like that. Well, we'll include a link for people to sign up. People can sign up in advance, can't they, Louise? To
yes,
access
absolutely.
to the summit. So that'll be perfect timing for when you're listening to this podcast. So make sure that you go along and find out more about that. Louise also has a brilliant podcast, the Social Bee podcast, and we'll have the link to that as well in the show notes so that you can find out more. Now, Louise has been been my guest this month, as I said right at the beginning, in the Business Club for Grown-ups membership group. She's been doing a fantastic masterclass for us on Instagram. I had so many questions as we were going through, because I've just started using Instagram this autumn, and I've been very much sort of just, taking the next step, finding out what are hashtags, what's an Instagram story, all those kinds of things. So if you'd like to come and join the Business Club for Grown-ups, you can find out more. There's content from Louise, there's content from me and my other guest experts as well. You can find out all of the details and sign up for a short period this month by going to thebusinessclubforgrownups.com, and there'll also be details about that in the show notes for this episode. So Louise, thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been brilliant to just understand the story of how your business came about, and I know that people listening will have found that really inspirational, because I think when we're in the early stages, we can so often just feel like, how do I do this? And we don't always have that long-term vision, do we? I think I never thought I'd give up my business, but now that I've been doing it for about 4 years, I am just like, isn't it amazing that I started off and like I didn't know what it was going to grow into, and now it's just something that I love so much. So I think it's really inspiring for people to just remember that actually they're on a journey. That journey has a destination, and they can build a business in the way that they want to. And now the last thing I'd love to ask you, Louise, is what would your one big tip be for women listening to this podcast who want to grow a business, are feeling freaked out by social media and online marketing? What one tip would you give them about how they can do their business?
I think the one thing to remember for 2019 is to connect and engage with people on social media, and to remember that the one half of that term is social media. So you want to be social on your social media, network with people, engage with people, whether that is in Instagram stories or it's in a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group. It is about actually engaging with other people. If you follow me on Instagram, it's Louise Brogan _, and if you see an Instagram story and hit reply, I will reply to you. And that is how I have actually built up a really nice network of people, is through actually talking back to people and engaging with them. And I think that's really key in growing your business online. It's about actually putting yourself out there and connecting with people, and you build your business one person at a time.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Oh, thank you, Louise. Thank you to everyone who's listened to this episode, and I will see you next time. You've been listening to the Business Club for Grown-ups podcast with Jessica Fearnley. To find out more, visit thebusinessclubforgrownups.com.